What a comeback it's been from the Tigers. Prestia, 40 metres out. Dion Prestia, the human meatball. He's done it.
Fist from Taylor. Siren's going to sound, I think. Siren's going to sound as Lloyd handballs. GWS are through to the 2019 Grand Final.
Hello, I'm Damien Barrett and welcome to Access All Areas, brought to you by Virgin Australia. A preliminary final weekend for the ages has set up a grand final showdown between the Tigers and Giants. And as I welcome Jimmy Bartel and Matthew Lloyd, there are some massive selection decisions this week.
There are, Damo. There's always grand final heartbreak, and we'll start with Jack Graham of the Richmond Football Club. He'd probably be the most nervous, you would have thought. He would have been a lock to play in the grand final. He does a great job, and here we see his shoulder obviously have some dislocated, and it popped out, Jimmy, about 3 or 4 times on the night.
Yeah, incredibly tough effort for him to soldier on, and it helped keep those rotations going through the night. But Richmond's VFL won a premiership, so congratulations to them. But 2 players they took out of that premiership side pre-game were Ross and McIntosh. And we see here Broad, who cops almost 2 head knocks here in the one play. So he probably looks most likely to get up and play. But with that shoulder injury, who looks like they're going to replace Graham?
Yeah, well, look, you mentioned those 2 guys coming out, Jack Ross and Camden McIntosh. I love the curveball possibilities around Marlon Pickett. I know that his best of field performance yesterday was not necessarily a complete endorsement to come into a grand final for a debut AFL game in the VFL that he did yesterday. But at the same time, he's had now a 6-week body of work in the VFL, which has been really impressive. And I would like to keep his options open just for the storyline.
Yeah. Well, they've had him as an emergency for a number of those weeks, so he's almost been next one looking in. But what a story to make, Lloydie. Mid-season draft, the debut in a grand final, and then best on ground in the VFL grand final. Could they possibly do that, Bolter, as Damo said?
Possibly, but I'd go Jack Ross, just because the Giants are so tough through the midfield, and losing Jack Graham, I think Jack Ross, although he's only played 7 games, he's the one I'd bring in for Jack Graham.
Giants have also got some issues. The big one is Coniglio. Hasn't played since round 17. Green will come back in after the suspension. Lockie Whitfield, you'd think, would come back in after the appendix operation last week. These are the possible inclusions down the bottom, Jimmy. All the headlines this week, though, will be about the first name on that inclusions list, possibly.
Yeah, well, he's been running for 4 weeks, Steve Coniglio, and there's no line put through him just yet. We've still got a number of days to go, and I guess the Giants have got to look at how the players pull up. As again, we're talking about Monday, so once they go through their checks, who's fit and ready to play.
Will Davis play?
Yeah, I think Phil's declared himself. Yep. He's playing. Jeez, he was in the wars. It popped his finger in the warm-up alone. So, look, Coniglio, no lines for him just yet.
So percentage-wise, Jimmy, taking him into a grand final under those circumstances, having not played since round 17, percentage-wise, as you sit here today, Monday morning?
I can't give you a number on it because there's still a number of training sessions to go, plus who's available from that Giant side that played in the prelim against Collingwood.
Highly unlikely. So, in my opinion, it'll be Hill and Tomlinson. Probably Tomlinson, the unlucky one.
Yep.
For Green and Whitfield.
They're the 2.
Yeah, they're the 2. Yeah.
And just remove the romanticism of Coniglio coming back.
Yeah, I just don't think he's done enough from people you speak to put him in this grand final.
Yep. Collingwood obviously lost to GWS. They were fortunate to get a goal given to Josh Thomas here, and this was the AFL Review Centre failing the competition, Jimmy, at the highest point of stress it's being introduced for the final series. That white bandage on the hand there of Lockie Keefe, you can see the index finger go backwards. It may well have hit Reece Shaw's finger beyond that as well. But for the AFL to come out with a 4-paragraph statement yesterday saying, and I'm paraphrasing, that the ball was touched, but the system was applied or the process was applied correctly. It just doesn't wash. They got the decision wrong at the most stressful point of the season.
No, comical response. As you said, decision wrong but process right. Well, the process is not right if you get the decision wrong. It has a cool new name. The bunker is now the Arc, but Noah got it wrong. Look, people could see it on the replay. Take your time. It's a prelim final. Don't rush. Just make the right decision, or else what are we doing with it?
Yeah, just say you got it wrong too. Yeah. Don't try and come out. What's this mean, Damo? Arc system designed to be complementary rather than serve the umpire.
Well, the use of the word complimentary there, I mean, as to Jimmy's point, you've just got to get what's in front of you right. And complimentary would have been to have made that decision correctly, and that'd be take the goal away from Josh Thomas. That's complimentary in its truest form. The surge that the Giants put on in the third quarter, it was overwhelming for Collingwood. It was a 5-goal 2-0 quarter, and the clearances and the contested possessions were all the Giants' way.
Yeah, I think they got the balance right once they come out after half-time. Look, the Giants were dominating contested ball and clearance, but they probably didn't have the balance around the stoppage and the contested work as well, where that's what Collingwood did really well. They had the numbers just sitting the right distance off the contest, but when they got it right, the Giants, you see Taranto breaking away from the stoppage here. They just got that balance right and were able to capitalise on their opportunities.
They were tougher, harder. I heard Buck say they were harder for longer. This is a contentious one. It could have been paid either way. Was it a push or was it just a hold?
That was a push.
Yeah, but I thought that Collingwood didn't play the conditions that well either.
Right.
I thought they were too cute with the ball, whereas the Giants played the conditions magnificently.
And did they also fail to capitalise on the dominance for most of the game, for 3.5 quarters anyway, of Brodie Grundy? 78 to 16 hit-outs, and yet not any of them were massively to Collingwood's advantage, and the clearances were won by the Giants quite markedly.
Yeah, well, hindsight's always perfect, isn't it? And we probably would have liked to see Grundy hit a few more on the outside, even take one out of the ruck, like Finlayson did to him. You could almost get a sense of what the umpires are doing. They're allowing some pushing and shoving going in the ruck. Could have maybe worked Mummy under it, taken it himself. So, look, saying hindsight's always perfect, and maybe they would have liked their time again by opening up some of those stoppages, especially in the final 7 or 8 minutes where they had the ball parked in front of their goal.
Just on that though, which midfielder beat their man really? Could say I won my position. Sidebottom didn't,
no.
Pendlebury didn't, and I thought Adams and Treloar weren't great. Phillips on the wing. So really, you could say who could we have had done more, but their midfielders all had poor days.
And it was a depleted midfield, wasn't it, by way of unavailability for the Giants. One man who stood up and covered was Zach Williams, who had the game of his life. 16 contested possessions, 10 clearances, and it was the surprise packet to come out of that midfield machination in this game.
Yeah, well, the second half of the year, they played him a lot more in the midfield. He's been absolutely super across half-back with his run and dash, but he's added a point of difference in the midfield. It's whenever he picks up the ball, he looks to take them on, and he's a kick-first midfielder. So when he takes this, he takes away from the stoppage and he gains metres and generally uses the ball well.
Yeah, he runs, he carries, he's hard. He's had a wonderful final series, Zach Williams. And yeah, you're looking for guys to enhance their reputation, and that's what Williams has done through this series.
With Green and Whitfield coming back in, and I know Whitfield's more of your outside mid, so to speak, but does it change that dynamic with him doing what he did in the prelim?
No, I don't think so, because Green will be the half forward who comes into the midfield, whereas, as you said, Whitfield will be the one who sets the outside, where he's playing wing or coming inside and working his way out.
When you lose a preliminary final unexpectedly, as Collingwood did, you need to pull it apart. And Brodie Mychek's game will be one that is briefed very considerably. Didn't touch the ball, didn't have possession until three-quarter time. Worked his way into it to a point in the last quarter, but the various opponents here, with Sam Taylor doing a number on him, Lockie Keefe had him at times as well. He just looked all at sea without Mason Cox helping him up there.
Well, it wasn't a big night for all forwards, marking forwards. I think there was only 4 contested marks being taken. But Lockie Keefe, being a bit bigger than Mychek, he was always able to take this back position. At worst, his spoiling was really good. And Sam Taylor always was coming over and helping out. So I guess you got to tip your cap to Taylor and Keefe, their job on him. But Mychek, he kept trying to work his way into it. Nearly got a hold of a mark late, but it just wasn't his night.
Well, do you love the big forwards? And Tom Lynch has now got 61 goals on the season, 5 in the prelim final against Geelong, and was ultimately, when it's all said and done, the difference in those two teams.
Yeah, he was 10 marks, 5 goals in a big final. And you look at this, you're wondering why there's so many different opponents. You know, Harry Taylor was the first one, Coniglio the next one. Here's Reese Tanley. He moves and works so hard, and that was what I was critical of early in the season, that he wasn't getting off a man well enough. Now he's got games under his belt, doing his pre-season, in-season. He's hard to stop.
So, Lloydie, you've got an all-Australian centre-half-back, full-back, wherever you want, who has the best strike rate of not losing contested situations in Mark Blitzarves, standing on a wing. Why isn't he being played?
I'd be pretty upset if I was a Geelong supporter. And Chris, he's a type of coach that'll back in what he does, but he kept him to 1 goal earlier in the season. I know Lynch is a different player now. But as a full forward, you're saying, gee, I hope Blitzarves doesn't come to me.
Yeah.
And he got exactly what he wanted, Tom Lynch.
What about the other key forward, Lordo? Jack Grievold, 19 goals from the 12 games he's played. It's been really interrupted, and there's excuses for that. And he's playing his role. Like, there was even moments with tap-ons and knock-ons that helped Richmond win that game. But are you worried about him going into a grand final with that score form line?
It's amazing how you're playing your role when the team wins. But if they were losing, he wouldn't be playing his role. A few tap-ons doesn't cut it. So Jack needs to be much, much better on grand final day to help his team win. He was lucky they got away with it on the weekend because he just doesn't seem to have the ping that he has, so to get off his man, and he'll probably be on Taylor, who's in great form. So yeah, he just probably needs to do a little bit more earlier in the game. I thought his urgency lifted as the game went on. It's got to be there from the first bounce.
Okay, Dustin Martin also in the first half. It was really quiet again. He copped a knock early, and this was the mark he took, which produced a Richmond goal. But he did seem to, I suppose, be a bit proppy after that. And we'll just show some centre bounce clearances now, where he just wasn't able to match up on Geelong. Having said that, produced a great second half, so bounced back. But were there concerns there?
Well, I think sometimes when you get the corky, it takes you a while to warm it back up. You get pretty stiff, and as you saw, he was proppy. You're not going to catch Dangerfield charging, breaking 50, but look, he plays the centre bounce and works his way forward. Sometimes when the opposition wins it away from there, it can look like you're not chasing. You see he's going forward side already on a lot of these.
This is why it was a great win, I thought. I thought some of the body language of moments like this from Dusty didn't look great. Cochin had a corky.
Yep.
Jack Graham does his shoulder, and to turn it around the way they did was great coaching.
Yep.
And showed a maturity of the team.
And the man you mentioned, Cochin, set the tone in the third quarter, as did Shane Edwards as well. But it was just their hard work and their preparedness to run down Stanley there, as Cochin did, Jim. You could see the time on the scoreboard there. It was crucial at that moment.
Well, that's on-field leadership, isn't it, from the skipper? That big tackle on Stanley, that almost ignited them and got them all going. You look at the hunt from thereafter. Richmond players come flying in and repeat efforts, repeat outnumbers. Well, Cochin again on Kelly, he's lucky not to get unlucky not to get a hold in the ball, but they all join in off the back of that.
Hardwick said after the game in his press conference, we got back to playing the Tigers' way.
Right.
And to me, that was that, just locking in the front half through their tackling.
Cats took a 21-point lead into half-time, but it could have been so many more points than that. They missed some sitters. That's a really embarrassing kick for a guy who is as good as he is in Mark Blitzhouse. But it wasn't just him. Selwood, again, kicks that. They go in with a bigger lead. And there are other reasons and moments that they're going to be cursing right now.
Yeah, and we'll have a look at the Lockie Henderson one, where they actually had the outnumber forward of the ball when he marks the ball here, probably about 55 metres out, Lloydie. But Cats players everywhere, and probably only one of them, though, really works in the space. The rest are all sort of charging back to the goal square.
Yeah. It was number two on the screen there. Number three by way of Guernsey number in Parfitt, who ends up being quite free there as an option. But there were other options there for Henderson on that moment. It was just a wasted forward thrust.
It was. Richmond want you blazing the ball long like that, and that's one that they would have a sleepless night. Opportunity lost by Geelong. They had them on the ropes and just didn't take their opportunities.
Dion Presti has put together an amazing season of football and was probably, well, in my eyes, best on ground in this game. And 28 disposals, 7 clearances, 3 goal assists, 2 goals. His kicking has been really good. Is he the man that Matt de Boer, Jimmy, may go to?
Well, certainly now it's a debate being had because of Presti's form. It normally just be Dustin Martin and try and put him away or limit his impact. But you highlighted that he's kicking, and that's the thing that Lloydie and I notice most. He's got that power and depth back. He seems to be completely over all those injuries that sort of hampered him in his early start at Richmond. It's just that punch he's got on his kick again.
Yeah, he's a much more damaging player. I think he was influential in their last premiership, but I think he's even more influential now. So much so that we say, do you go to him instead of Dustin Martin? Dame, I want to talk to you about Gary Ablett Jr. Yeah. A contract's been there in front of him. Is it a concern that he hasn't wanted to sign that? Does that question how desperate he is to go on?
I think he obviously, ideal world and fantasy world for him was to win a premiership and then make the decision. But I feel they're all in on getting something done this year. Taylor's another one. Henderson's another one. I think it's time. I know you've got a different view, though. You still think that him at 70% is worthy of a spot next year? Yeah,
well, we were debating whether he'd be in the All-Australian team. He was in the All-Australian squad. And because of how hard it is to find players in the competition who average 20 touches and a goal and a half a game, and as I said, I still think 70% Gary is better than most players in that position, and he's still got a lot of youth still playing around him.
His 3 finals, though, were not good, were they, Bordo?
They weren't. He was beaten up by Maynard and then Jackson Nelson, a little bit better in the first half on the weekend. But he's got to want it. If he's not hungry, I'd go out with a little bit left in the tank.
Sure. Yeah. It's time for the 2019 Toyota AFL Grand Final this weekend, and make sure that you're prepared before you catch public transport to the big one at the MCG. Plan your journey at ptv.vic.gov.au/get me to the game. Richmond versus the Giants, boys. Your early thoughts?
Well, the Giants have to bring that hard, physical, contested footy again and win the territory battle that way. We see every time Richmond, if they get their hands on it around the stoppage and the clearance, they are so efficient in taking the ball forward with forward handball, and they all get involved with that huge running power.
I'm big on the fact that you must play for 120 minutes against Richmond. We saw the Giants on the weekend, couldn't three-quarter time. Cameron kicks that goal, they stopped. Richmond beat you in that case. We saw Brisbane start really well in the first final. They get steamrolled. I thought they were sluggish a little bit, Richmond, when you have that long break. And then they found their mojo. I think Richmond should be too powerful because it's been a tough 3 weeks for the Giants.
Yeah.
A really taxing 3 weeks, but I think they should be overpowered by Richmond, yeah.
And going into the Brownlow tonight, it's as open as it's been for many years. For what it's worth, I'm narrowing it down to Bontempelli and Fife, but your two thoughts?
Different from that. I've gone with Paddy Cripps. He's almost like every player's favourite player, the way he plays. The big beast in the centre bounces. They won 2 games last year, 20 votes. 7 games they won this year. And I feel like his big games have been even bigger. You think of that Brisbane game where he had 30 plus and kicked 5. He's hit the scoreboard. And no disrespect to his teammates. I just feel like he draws the big votes more so than his teammates.
Yeah, it's 3 for me. Dangerfield, Bontempelli and Neil. Yep. And I'm going to go Dangerfield by a vote.
Okay. Time now for the Access Big Ask. This one is to you, Lloydie. Does Richmond have a mental edge over the Giants because of what they did to them in the 2017 prelim final?
No, too long ago, that is. They're a different side now, the Giants.
Jimmy, if you were a recruiter for the Pies, which area of the ground would you target first?
They don't need much. They played a grand final and a prelim, maybe a ruck to eventually take over Grundy. So you've got another 5 or 6 years of Grundy, hopefully, or a key forward.
Lloydie, what grading do you give Geelong's season?
I'll give them a B. I think it was pretty good, and I thought they were pretty good in that prelim.
And Jimmy, what grading do you give Collingwood's season?
A B+, 4 points away from another grand final. And Damo, what's the latest going on in the Adelaide coaching?
Just established the coaching subcommittee, but Scott Burns is the man I feel they'll be going and focusing on very, very closely. To both of you, you've both played in multiple grand finals. What was your favourite part of the week?
I'll never forget the buzz of having about 5,000 people watching training at Windy Hill, both on Tuesday and Thursday night.
Winning. Winning is the best.
Just 3 times only?
No, winning is the best bit about grand final week.
All right, now you've both brought your regular funnies to the table. We'll start with you today.
Yes, a funny for mine was the Giants getting in the heads of the Collingwood Football Club. So here's Jaden Stevenson having a shot for goal, and they preempted this. Don't choke you, Collywobbles. And you've given it to him, and you got him all day on the field, off the field. Look at Bucks, he's not too happy about that, Jim.
Yeah, well, I'm getting the crepe paper and making another couple of hundred of them for Richmond this week. But speaking of Richmond, I love watching Jack Riewoldt. He almost does the libber here. He goes running off, celebrating. Yes, I've kicked a goal. Yeah. What are you talking about? It's like the bump ball in cricket. He conned the crowd, but it hit the post.
All done. Now, it's going to be a massive week, boys. Thanks for joining us
so much
today, and thanks for joining us on Access All Areas, brought to you by Virgin Australia. Have a good week. Enjoy the grand final, and we'll see you next Monday. Goodbye.